You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250, where we look at events that took place 250 years ago this week. This is from the American Revolution Podcast, just a short bonus episode to remind you about these important anniversaries from the Revolutionary War. This week, we remember the capture of Colonel Ethan Allen, which took place on September 25th, 1775. Last week, we discussed the Siege of St. Jean's, which is just south of Montreal. General Richard Montgomery conducted the siege while sending Major John Brown north of the siege to sit between the Continentals and the British forces at Montreal. Colonel Ethan Allen returned in mid-September from an earlier mission. General Philip Schuyler had sent Allen into Canada to pass along word that the Continentals were only fighting the British and that they hoped the Canadians would join them in overthrowing their oppressors. Allen did not have a Continental Commission. His Green Mountain Boys had voted to make Colonel Seth Warner their leader when their regiment joined the Continentals. Allen had been hanging around Fort Ticonderoga when Schuyler gave him the mission in Canada and promised to treat him as an officer, even though he wasn't one. Montgomery offered similar treatment when he asked Allen to move north again and work with Major Brown. Allen had more ambitious goals. Allen, Warner, and Brown concocted a plan to attack and capture Montreal on their own. Brown had a little over 100 Continentals, and Allen scraped together a group that was nearly the same size, mostly made up of local militia who had joined the cause in Canada, and a few Connecticut militia who were with them. The plan was that Allen would cross the river and attack Montreal from the north, while Brown's men attacked from the south. Allen got his men into position, but there was no sign of Brown or any other Americans. The defenders in Montreal saw Allen's approach. General Guy Carleton was in the city, and it was able to assemble about 500 Indians and Canadian militia to attack Allen. This much larger force charged the Americans, forcing them to flee. About half of Allen's force simply disappeared into the woods. They were locals, and they knew where to hide. The rest began running away, but were run down by the enemy. Eventually, Allen agreed to surrender. What follows is Allen's own account, which he wrote years later. The officer I capitulated with then directed me and my party to advance towards him, which was done. I handed him my sword, and in half a minute after, a savage, part of whose head was shaved, being almost naked and painted with feathers intermixed with the hair of the other side of his head, came running to me with an incredible swiftness. He seemed to advance with more than mortal speed. As he approached near me, his hellish visage was beyond all description. Snake's eyes appear innocent in comparison of his. His features extorted malice, death, murder, and the wrath of devils and damned spirits are the emblems of his countenance, and in less than 12 feet of me presented his firelock at the instant of his present. I twitched the officer to whom I gave my sword between me and the savage, but he flew round with great fury, trying to single me out to shoot me without killing the officer. But by the time I was near as nimble as he, keeping the officer in such position that his danger was my defense. But in less than half a minute, I was attacked by just such another imp of hell. Then I made the officer fly around with incredible velocity for a few seconds of time when I perceived a Canadian, who had lost one eye as appeared afterwards, taking my part against the savages, and in an instant an Irishman came to my assistance with a fixed bayonet and drove away the fiends, swearing by Jesus he would kill them. This tragic scene composed my mind. The escaping from so awful a death made even imprisonment happy, the more so as my conquerors on the field treated me with great civility and politeness. It cut me to the heart to see the Canadians in so hard a case, in consequence of their having been true to me. They were wringing their hands, saying their prayers, as I concluded, and expected immediate death. I therefore stepped between the executioners and the Canadians, opened my clothes, and told General Prescott to thrust his bayonet into my breast, for I was the sole cause of the Canadians taking up arms. The guard, in the meantime, rolling their eyeballs from the general to me, as though impatiently waiting his dread commands to sheathe their bayonets in my heart. I could, however, plainly discern that he was in a suspense and quandary about the matter. This gave me additional hopes of succeeding, for my design was not to die, but to save the Canadians by a finesse. The general stood a minute, when he made me the following reply: "I will not execute you now, but you shall grace a halter at Tyburn, God damn you." The British did not consider Allen a prisoner of war. Rather, he was a traitor, and treated as a criminal. He was placed aboard a Navy ship and held in chains, in solitary confinement. While the British did consider hanging him, they were afraid that doing so would result in the Americans hanging British prisoners. Instead, a month later, they sent him to Britain, where he remained in prison. A few months later, the government ordered him sent back to America. Allen remained in British custody. After the British captured New York City, Allen was held as a prisoner of war, and for a time at least offered limited parole. The British held him for nearly 3 years, until Allen was part of a prisoner exchange in 1778. After his exchange, Allen reported to Valley Forge, where Washington offered him a colonel's commission, but Allen returned to Vermont and sat out the rest of the war. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. For more details on the attempted invasion of Quebec and the capture of Ethan Allen, please check out episode 72 of the American Revolution podcast. I also encourage you to subscribe for free on whatever platform you like. Thanks for listening to this Revolution 250 moment on the American Revolution podcast.